Okay, great. So tonight's webinar is writing college papers. I had it scheduled for about an hour, but if you can stay longer than that, I'm willing to stay at about 7:30 because we do have a lot to cover. Okay, so tonight's agenda, we are going to talk about why writing is important, and it might be obvious to some and not obvious to others. And we're going to do a very simple exercise. We're going to discuss the types of writing, writing process and a structure, a thesis statement versus a research paper. I'm going to just touch a little bit about plagiarism, as the library really covers this in a great depth. Strategies and some tips, and some of the resources that you can find to develop your writing. So why is writing so important? Well, if you really think about it, it is used in every aspect of your life, from writing a cover letter, when you're applying for a position, to a resume, to possibly writing, a letter of complaint. Possibly if you're grieving over, an assessment on your house, you're writing, okay? And so writing is also thinking. So what you're thinking somehow has to be conveyed in writing, okay, for the most part. It definitely is unique to each individual. It's definitely a process, and we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, it's meant to be read. So when you're writing something, okay, you need to be aware that somebody's going to be reading it, okay, and it needs to be clear and concise. So, some of the questions here that were asked is, is everything writing here at Empire State College? Well, you are required to demonstrate your level of learning and the knowledge you've gained through writing, okay, basically through writing, like I just said. That is your main communication tool, is your ability to write. If you are unable, or if you struggle just a bit in trying to clearly convey what you've learned, you are going to struggle a little bit. But of course, this is the whole reason why we're doing this session tonight, and that's the reason why we have a lot of support to help you with that. But your grades will definitely be affected, okay? So just be aware of that. So let's do a quick exercise, and really all I want you to do is I put two pictures up here in 2 words, all right? And I'm going to give you kind of like 30 seconds just to think about it, look at it, okay? And then I'm just going to ask you some questions, or I'm going to actually just kind of make some comments. Okay, so while you're looking at these pictures, I'm sure that you are gravitating towards a particular picture or a particular word, right? And I'm sure you're going through a process asking yourself, well, why do I like that picture? What feelings or reactions are being evoked by just looking at those pictures and words? For instance, I know, when I put exercise up for some people, it definitely evokes many feelings and reactions, okay? Some positive, some very negative. And of course, can you identify something specific, that is evoking those feelings and reactions? My guess is probably, if I take exercise, for instance, maybe you had a bad experience, and so you know why, when you look at that word, your stress levels go up, okay? Freedom means something to somebody, right? To a lot of us, actually. What do you think each picture is about? Everybody's going to have a different opinion as to, what those pictures mean to them and what those words actually mean, okay? So everybody's going to have a unique perspective. And of course, you're probably trying to find a common link between the pictures, is there a common link? Maybe not, maybe so, okay? Possibly composition, maybe, all right? Now, if you wanted to give someone just one important piece of information or idea about the pictures, what would it be? All right, so lots of things I'm assuming are going through your mind as you're looking, okay, at these pictures. And it'll make sense why we went through this exercise, okay? So, really, what does this have to do with writing, Terry? I mean, seriously. Well, you just experienced some thought process or processes used in writing, okay? So when you're reading something, or you're looking at a particular presentation, or you're listening to a lecture, you are already going through some sort of process in your mind. We all do, okay? And we always are asking to start with observations, you know, with the writer noticing and choosing something about to write, right? So when you're looking at those pictures and those words, you know, might decide that you're going to write, you know, and take a different angle on, let's say, for instance, that picture in the top right-hand corner, where someone might take a different type of perspective, okay? Writing often involves description, okay, with the writer using concrete details. Now this starts at, you know, elementary school. I don't know if any of you have young children, but I know my children are constantly asked to provide details, and they are constantly graded that you're not providing enough detail, you're just doing surface, you know, writing, okay? And so the reason why I'm mentioning this to you is this is definitely a part that you need to be aware of when you're writing. Don't just, you know, provide the obvious. You know, the instructor is going to ask you to, I'm sorry, I'm just stopping right now because it appears that the sound keeps cutting out. The thing is that because we are doing it, Rosemary has no sound.
Cutting in and out.
Is it catching up though?
Looks like it's slow moving down.
Okay, it's possible that the bandwidth is slow, and sometimes it'll catch up and my voice will change. So try to be patient. Hopefully it will, yeah, it catches up. So that might be what you're hearing, okay? All right, so back to, you know, involves description. So when you're writing, you definitely want to make sure you provide some details, okay? Without details, the depth is lacking, so just be aware of that. Writing generally involves perhaps explaining why. Okay, when we go back to those pictures and those words, okay, think about that. You know, if you're going to take a different perspective, you need to explain why, okay, you're going in that direction, and explaining possibly with some grounding information that maybe you found in some other readings, okay? And that's where we start talking about citing your sources. Okay, so if you can find a link, ground it, regardless if someone can't see it. If you can explain it, okay, describe it well, then you've done a good job. And I'm just going to give you a really quick example. I'm not going to get into great detail, but I had a student, okay, that was Greek literature, had to do a comparison of two different pieces. And the particular student did a comparison of Medusa and Jesus Christ. Now, your reaction is like, are you kidding me? Well, that's what I saw, but the student did a very good job of doing those comparisons. There's 3 comparisons. I had to pick out 3 points. Regardless if somebody can't see that, if you can ground it and it is well written, okay, that's all that really matters, okay? Unless, of course, you're completely off the assignment and completely off the point. The next point is, you know, writing may involve inference on the basis of evidence, interpretation on the basis of observation. Okay, now, you know, what does inference mean? And so I pulled something from the dictionary just because I want to make sure that we all know what that means. But it's basically the act of passing from one proposition, statement, or judgment considered as true to another whose truth is believed to follow, blah, 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 okay? Basically, you're inferring something, a conclusion or opinion that is formed because of a known facts or evidence, okay? So that's what inference means. The last point here is writing often involves synthesis, or finding the common link between things and explaining that link. Back to that Medusa and Jesus Christ, right? Okay, so there was a link in this particular student's mind, and she actually conveyed the link very well. So if you can find the link, okay, and you can show that and demonstrate that nicely in your writing, then there you go. So if we went back, for instance, okay, I am sure that we could probably find a link between exercise and freedom, right? And I'll bet you if you looked at these pictures of who those artists were, could you find a link? If you can, and you find information, okay, to support that particular opinion, then again, you've done a very good job. Sorry, here, I'll do that. Okay, so bottom line is, remember, writing doesn't happen all at once. It is a process. And the whole point of those pictures and those words was really to point out that it is a process. There are things that your mind is just going to go through, and the same thing is going to apply when you start trying to write, okay? And as you reviewed the pictures, as I mentioned, you're going back and forth between the pictures and the words and trying to formulate something, right? Some type of an opinion, some type of a reaction, just something. Again, that is a process. And lastly, writing clarifies and presents the results of the writer's thinking process, okay? That is very important, all right? And we'll get into that a little bit more of what that actually means, okay? You can have a process that's all over the place, but eventually you have to structure it. You have to bring it, you know, back. As we mentioned earlier, right? Your writing needs to be read. Your structure as far as the process is concerned can be unstructured, but your writing has to be structured so it reads well, okay? If I am going too fast, okay, and there's something that you don't understand, okay, then I can definitely clarify. So don't be afraid saying, you know, Terry, I didn't understand that. I was too fast. I have no problem stopping and going back, okay? Okay, so let's talk about the types of writing assignments. And, you know, I'm not going to cover them all. These are just a few, okay? So chapter summaries, which is obvious. We'll get into that a little bit. And then there's various kinds of essays. And then, of course, you have a term or research paper, which is kind of the same thing. So chapter summary, exactly what it states, okay? It is an understanding of the text in your chapter or the chapter you just read. You're writing a summary, okay? All you're doing is covering the main points. You're not writing a huge paper on a particular chapter. You're just, like I said, you're highlighting some of the things that were in that chapter.
Bandwidth issue. The slides aren't catching up for Kathleen.
Kathleen, you might be just having an issue in your area. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so now the types of essays. And I'm just going to just cover these. There's three here: personal, position, and reaction. Okay, you know, a reaction essay is written as a response to some facts and figures. It should have a critical approach and are different from writing the responses to movies and books. Okay, so oops, I jumped, didn't I? I jumped all the way down. My apologies. So that's a reaction essay. So let's go back up to personal. It includes an autobibliography, or biblical, I can never pronounce that word, my apologies. An autobio, information describing a meaningful event or occurrences in the author's life. Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, if it's not, I can expand upon that. A position essay, okay, expresses a persuasive argument or a viewpoint about a given topic. Okay, exactly what that says. You're taking a position, you're expressing, okay, you know, a point, and you are making sure that you are providing a very solid, grounded argument, okay, about that particular topic. Okay, so for instance, I would say a position paper would be an ethics paper. Some of the ethic courses, you have to take a position, and you have to then ground that, okay, with a particular theory, okay, and it's important because you don't want an opinion in there, especially in ethics. You could, I guess you could have an opinion, but you really have to use a theory to support that, okay? Let me make sure that reaction, that I really conveyed that clearly. Okay, so reaction essay, okay, you can express your personal thoughts and ideas on a particular subject, okay? Like I mentioned, it should have a critical tone, typically contains a thesis statement that describes, you know, the total reaction essay. And of course, you know, again with the reaction essay, you should make sure that, you know, along with your views, you also have data that supports your opinion, okay? So the position and reaction essay, okay, are somewhat the same, but yet a little unique, okay? All right, so a term paper, or like a research paper. This paper requires you to do, basically pick a research topic, okay? And you're going to use a number of sources in order to support that topic. You're going to analyze your findings, and then you're going to actually, you know, convey those findings in your paper, and then you're going to write, like I said, the findings that you of what you found. And sometimes those findings are not going to support, by the way, your topic. All right. So here's the differences between essays and research papers. I mean, both of them have thesis, okay? But with a research paper, you have a research question that you are trying to support, okay? You're trying to find out something, okay? Essays are typically smaller in page numbers, whereas a research paper is quite extensive. You know, your essay, you're going to give examples based on personal experience. It doesn't usually require source material, but I highly suggest that it should, and can be based on your opinion. Okay. Of course, the research paper, as I mentioned, should answer the question. You should definitely be using source materials to answer your question. You definitely do not, okay, use personal experience or opinion. Okay, you stay completely away from that. And then, of course, you synthesize the information you find to shape your answer. Okay, so now that we kind of covered really the types of papers, okay, now we want to get into a little of the writing process. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, writing, there is a process to this, okay? And it can start off as unstructured, you know, your process of thinking, okay, but then there is some structure that you should kind of follow, or at least try to. So you have your pre-writing, okay? This pre-writing you're going to do multiple times possibly, all right, and same thing with the drafting, and then revising, and then rewriting and polishing. And sometimes you're going to go through this process multiple times. However, you need to know when to stop. If you've done this process 20 times, you've done it too much, all right? So we're going to get into, you know, some of these areas in a little bit more detail, all right? But just remember that you are going to have a pre-writing. So when you looked at those pictures, okay, and those words, you could do some pre-writing right there. So for instance, what do you know about, you know, I don't know, let's just take ethics again. What do you know about a particular, if you are to, I don't know, support a particular, I don't know, if you were given a case study and you selected, you know, a position, what do you know about that particular case study? Okay, that's your pre-writing right there. You know, what information have you already read? What do you know? Write that down. All right, and then you start going and pulling information from other sources, so on and so forth. And then you revise, then you rewrite, and you polish. Okay, code of ethics and conduct, exactly. Okay, so pre-writing. Again, you know, you're looking at those pictures and those words. You want to brainstorm a topic or an idea. So you're in your, let's take a different course. Let's take a history course, okay? And you have to come up with a particular topic for your term paper at the end of the term, okay? So you brainstorm some topics. Okay, then you do some note-taking, you write some journals. Now you don't have to do all of this, okay, but some of this does help. Make outlines, okay? You know, just basically it's free writing is what the last point is the last bullet is saying. Just start writing. All right. Remember, you're not going to be handing this in, okay? This is not meant to be perfect. This is the collecting stage, okay? So write what you know, as I mentioned, gather sources and start listing and capturing so that you can cite. So, okay, this is a point here with the pre-writing. So as you're collecting information and you're, you know, going to the library and you've got some journals and you have maybe possibly some reliable websites and possibly some reliable books and magazines or whatever they might be, you know, make sure that you have another area where you're capturing where that information, okay, can be used to cite, okay, that information, okay? So it will be a lot easier instead of trying to find that information at a later date. Okay, so drafting, all right, so now you've done this. Now you're going to start looking, okay, at how you're going to articulate, okay, or at least attempt to articulate your understanding. So you're going to look at your pre-writing and you're going to do your first draft of an essay or paper, okay, and again, this is not the one you're going to be handing in. If you're doing this 2 nights prior to this being due, I can guarantee you're not going to get a very good grade, all right? It's going to show. So you definitely want to do the drafting a couple times. And like I mentioned, this will not be your first attempt, okay? And as you write and rewrite, strive to discuss your topic with clarity and directness using your notes and outlines as guided. Now, something that I suggest, especially at the drafting stage, you might have, let's just say you collected like, I don't know, 10 pages worth of information, okay, and it's somewhat unstructured but structured, but you're only supposed to be handing in a 5-page paper, all right? So obviously you've got to scale that down. I would not throw that information away. I would cut and paste it into a different document or just do multiple revisions, which can get kind of confusing. But you can is just cut and paste. And like I said, you could just, title it as additional information for your particular topic, because then you can just pull it back in again if you need be, all right? Or you might find that, I really, this doesn't support what I was trying to convey. I'm going to pull that out, but this does, okay? So I think it's a very good habit to get into at the drafting stage. Again, the drafting is a little bit more formal way of developing and organizing your thoughts and your position, okay? Don't worry if the drafting doesn't clearly, okay, convey it or it's not fully developed. Again, you want to go through this process a couple times, okay? Revision. Okay. So now that you've gone through your drafting, now you want to go through your first revision of your draft. Make sure that you're very critical of your own work. Look for discrepancies. This is where you're trying to hone in and cleaning up your paper so that you can eventually hand it in. And this might be also a good time to maybe submit this to Smart Thinking, which is an online writing assistance service. Okay, they're going to provide some feedback. So if in fact your thesis is not very clear, okay, or maybe it is but your paper is a little, they will provide you some feedback as to that you might want to develop that a little bit further.
1T, right?
Yes, 1T. All right, so again, look for discrepancies and gaps in your logic. If something doesn't make any sense, okay, pull it out or try to clarify it right there at that time. If your question, okay, if it's a research paper and the question is not being answered, okay, look at that and keep asking yourself that question as you're reading your paper, is it answering the question? All right, and then of course any ideas or thoughts that are really disorganized, either try to clean them up in the draft or pull them out if they just don't make any sense or you're not even sure what you were trying to say. It's okay, pull it out, you can work back on it again. Personally, I like to print out things, okay, and reread it. I like to read it out loud. I love to give it to people to read, all right, because you get, things are caught where you're not going to catch them, and they might say, well, what do you really mean, okay, by this, okay? So, again, I would do a hard copy. If you're comfortable doing electronically, great. But the hard copy, you can take it everywhere, okay, with you versus maybe bringing your laptop and so on and so forth. Well,
Smart Thinking question. Does one submit for revision?
Well, they don't edit your paper, okay? So Wendy was asking that she's not used Smart Thinking, okay? They review it and make suggestions. Right, exactly. They provide feedback, but they will not edit your paper. It's not an editing service, okay? You are the editor. Read your paper out loud. This can definitely be helpful.
Reading out loud, that's actually in the headphones.
Yeah, I know. I'm just looking at Wendy's questions. It's conceptual suggestions? I'm thinking about that.
Well, they're not really suggestions, they're feedback points.
They're points, yeah. I'm just trying to come up with maybe some of the suggestions or the feedback that I've seen through Smart Thinking.
As in logic, flow, etc.
Yes, exactly. They're not going to say logic because they don't know the subject, okay? So they might say, okay, you've, because they need to know what the assignment is, okay? So,
Not clear, revise.
Right, exactly. So this thesis, exactly. Thank you, Kathleen. So they know the assignment, and if the assignment was X, but yet your thesis is really just not, honing in on what the assignment was, they're going to tell you that this doesn't make any sense, that you need to clean it up. How do you know if you have edited your paper? Well, you're not going to know until you get a grade. Okay? If you've done your job and you've gone, your due diligence, and you've gone through these processes, and you believe you have done your best, then you're going to find out when your instructor provides feedback. Okay? That's just the nature of school in general. You just never know. It's not like a test where you can go and take the quiz and, you really don't know either, right? Okay, so I guess the last point here about the revision is mark it up with notes and make corrections, okay? So I guess the things that I want you to think about, okay, as you're revising your draft, have you provided enough evidence to support your thesis, okay, or your research question, all right? And you keep asking yourself that question as you're going through the revision. Do you leave any questions in the mind of the reader? So think about that. The best, again, I would do this. I would have a friend or have somebody else that knows nothing about the topic read it. If they're like, I'm not really getting it, or you really didn't answer the question, or I have all these questions, then you probably did not provide a good enough argument or a good enough grounding to support your question, okay, or good enough evidence. All right, so that might be a good thing or a good process to go through with somebody. Is your information presented in a logical order? Again, as you read it, all right, you know what something is logical. If you start off with, what would be a good example? I'm trying to think of a good example. You start talking about how the moon is blue, okay, and then, 2 paragraphs down, you're talking about, Iraq and something or whatever. Well, there's no logic to that, okay? Maybe there is, but you haven't really done a good job to show why the moon is blue and something about Iraq, you know what I mean? I'm giving this as it's not a really good example, but I'm trying to make a point that, that's not logical. So, and then the last thing is, does your writing flow? And what I mean by flow, are you using transition words like, also, furthermore, in addition, besides, much less, let alone, blah, blah, blah. There's so many transition words that you can use that will, move you right into the next point that you're trying to make, okay, the next paragraph. So if you don't know what those transitions words are, just go to our website, into our writing resource, and you can just type in transition words, or you can just go to the internet and you can find lots of transition words, okay? I have a whole page here that you can use. And then lastly, have you said what you wanted to say in a clear and effective way? All right? And I should also say, one point I didn't make is the paper written the way it's supposed to be written? Meaning, was it a research and term paper, or was it a reaction essay? Make sure that when you read the assignment that you are actually meeting the expectations of that particular assignment. Okay? All right, so the next process, okay, is rewrite and polish, okay? So rewrite the parts of your assignment that needed work. So you went through, okay, that revision. Now you have to go back and you have to polish it up, okay? And you might need to repeat this stage again a few more times. And then, of course, polishing a final draft includes what? It includes minor editing, revision of the content, proofing, for spelling, grammar, and punctuation, all right? And I don't believe Smart Thinking is going to pick up, by the way, the spelling, grammar, and punctuation. So be aware of that and make sure you spell check. All right, structure. So what are the structure, the 3 basic parts of a writing? What is the structure, right? Well, you always have an introduction. You always have the body, which is a lot of the meat, and then your conclusion, okay? So the introduction sets the stage, captures the interest of the reader, and then, of course, you always have, present some type of a thesis statement, if applicable. And then, of course, the body, as I mentioned, is your meat, okay? That gives topics, the evidence, examples, details. It supports your thesis statement or your research question. And then lastly, the conclusion really just is a summary of the main points, okay, within your document, okay? So you're reiterating, reinforcing all of those things that you put in your body, okay, and reinforcing, okay, what you stated in your introduction, okay? And let me see here, it's a wrap-up. I mean, really is a wrap-up. And it may end with suggestions for further inquiry. So for instance, you know, statistics. I don't know if any of you are taking statistics, but at the end of the term, each term, you have to do a research project. You have to do a research paper, I should say, or term paper. And you have to put a question out there, and you have to you know, do a lot of testing to either support, in some cases you're hoping that it's going to support your question. If it doesn't, okay, your conclusion at the end might say, you know, there's further inquiry or further evidence or further testing needs to be done, you know, it's inconclusive, so on and so forth. And that's okay too in the conclusion. Thesis statement. Okay, this gets everybody. What is a thesis statement? Most essays and research papers will require the thesis statement. Okay, it's a position, perspective on an aspect of your topic. Okay, your thesis should, okay, take a definite and limited position about a particular topic that you chose. Don't pick a topic that you know nothing about, let alone have any interest in. Okay, so for instance, I have no interest in, I don't know, I'm just trying to think, I was just talking to my daughter about something. There's no reason why I would want to know why, I don't know, roosters, I don't know, crow and midnight. I don't know, just something, just pick something that you are interested, right, yeah, why is burning purple? Good point, exactly, okay? That's actually a really good question. So definitely pick something that you're interested in, because then it's fun writing the paper and it's fun finding information about that particular topic, okay? So Kathleen states, my introduction thesis is usually always too long. Any hints to hone in on a concise thesis statement? I have trouble making a concise argument. You might have too many arguments in there, Kathleen. So, you know, I would have to look at it in order to give you some feedback, but I would say look at it and are you trying to cover too much, okay, in your introduction and thesis, all right? Maybe try to take a position on one or two things. It would be my suggestion. Because obviously if you got too many, you're going to have a trouble developing your paper. You're going to go in too many different directions. Do all thesis statements need to be argumentative? No, they do not. Kelly, might not have actual statement till paper is done anyway. Well, be careful there, okay? Because if that's the case, in some cases, depending on the course, you have to actually submit your thesis statement before you write your paper, okay? And I know, for instance, in stats, you know, you have to submit your topic, your research question, and then you have to state that, you know, for instance, you know, students that attend public schools versus private schools do better on math exams, all right? That's a statement, okay? I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to go try to support that, right? If you go through your paper and then you come up with it, and it's probably not going to jive. Does the thesis statement have to be in the first paragraph?
Pretty close to it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to, I'm just wondering how to really answer that question other than yes, you know, you want it right in the beginning because that's what captures, okay, the reader. Otherwise, if they have to read too far down in the paper, okay, and they're not really quite sure what the paper's about, it's going to be kind of hard to grab the attention of the reader, okay? How long are ideal thesis statements? It all depends on the topic, Brian, okay? I mean, you obviously don't want to have something so long that you lose the reader, okay? It depends on the assignment. Sometimes just, you know, 2 sentences at the most. I would say 3 sentences. It shouldn't really be that long. Exactly, Donnelly. Usually the professor will specify what format to follow, correct? Yes, follow. It depends on the class psych is APA. Okay, so if we're talking formatting, let's jump ahead. We can talk about that another time. But I guess the bottom line is that don't make your life difficult in creating this thesis that is a paragraph, 2 paragraphs long, because remember, you're going to have to actually support that statement. All right? Now, if you have a statement and you feel you need to provide some explanation, possibly because maybe the terminology, then I believe you can do that. Okay, but again, I would not create this big, huge thesis. It's going to be hard to support it. Again, if you look at this, it clearly shows the focus of your position or argument. Okay, if in fact you do need to take a paragraph to do it, and it is very clear, okay, and it's very clear to the reader of what the paper is going to be about, then do that. But if you're having a hard time really honing in on that, okay, in a paragraph, you might have to either, one, pick a different topic, okay, or come up with a way to shorten it up. And then, of course, show understanding of the complexities of your topic. So, all right, so if we look at that particular statement there, or that particular bullet, if you're doing something that's a little complex, okay, you might have a thesis statement, and underneath that you might have to explain it a little bit more about that particular topic, okay? So if someone were to write some type of a science paper and it was something to do with, I don't know, something that was very scientific, a terminology that I wasn't, clear about, you might actually have to clarify that.
Wendy, it's much more difficult if the search is too broad.
Yeah, if your search is too broad, then it's definitely very difficult. Your thesis statement really has to be obvious and very clear. It can be a little broad, but not too broad, because then you're going to find too many resources and you're going to have to pick some type of a direction. And yes, you can always find information on both sides of a position too. So that is the reason why, yes, it has to be narrow. That's the reason why you need to make sure that you pick a topic that you're interested in and try to hone in on something very, very specific that you want to know about. Okay? If you leave it broad as to, I wish I had some of those questions. Yeah, let me see here. Did I bring up some samples here? All right, actually I did. So let's go to the next slide. I did do that. I knew I did that. So here are some thesis statements, okay? And as you can see, these are not very large. I mean, they're like 2 sentences, maybe 1 sentence. In this case, they're 1 sentences. So, for instance, the first one, it says, the ability to purchase television advertising is essential for any candidate's bid for election to the Senate, because television reaches millions of people and thus has the ability to dramatically increase name recognition. So that particular person is going to have to support that. Does it in fact, okay, increase name recognition? All right? And so this particular thesis hones in on exactly that. All right? Okay, Donnelly, thank you very much. I'll make sure that you get the recorded link. You're welcome. Typically, yes, the assignments are usually flexible enough to choose topics, okay, that you're interested in, okay, because one, it's easier, and we recognize that. Sometimes you might see that, some topics are suggested by the instructor, okay, but in general what I've seen is that you're typically given the flexibility to choose it yourself, okay. To that point, is it necessary to present both sides of a statement, thesis, argument? You can, if in fact it supports your particular position stronger, okay? It depends on the paper, but yes, I think personally you can say that, if we take this first thesis statement, that all of the research, and studies have shown that, it does increase the name recognition. However, there are some other, research that indicates that it might not. But those particular, that particular data is questionable, or you could say, depending on. So yes, you can do that. It definitely would support, if you can actually show that it supports your particular position stronger, then I would do that. And the reason why I would present both sides is because that means that you're not biased one way or the other, and that you did truly look at the other side. All right? So I think that's important. Okay, so again, you know, I'm going to just read the last bullet. It says adult students returning to college make up a higher percentage of entering students than they did 20 years ago due to economic, social, and public policy factors. Okay, so I mean, you can take this in lots of different directions, okay, but again, this particular student was taking a position. All right, so let's go. So more of a nod to the opposing thoughts. I would say yes. Now be careful there. If you show that you can show opposing thoughts, actually, and actually that's fine too. You could say that, you know, there was limited data to support my particular, you know, statement, and that there was more evidence that showed otherwise. You can do that as well, okay? Or you could show that, you know, it was inconclusive, that the information, the data that you've collected is not showing, you know, one way or the other. And that's fine too. Again, I think it depends on the position or the paper itself, but typically, especially with a research paper, you want to be showing both parts. Because think about it. When you're reading a research paper, don't you want to know the opposing, you know, opposing side? I mean, if in fact there's more negative than positive to support that particular author's, you know, position, you know, are they being biased because they're not showing anything, you know, that's contradictive of what they found? So I would say yes. Okay. Okay, so research paper. A research paper answers a research question. Okay, and so depending on your courses, you're going to have to, depending on the courses you're taking, and I keep coming back to stats only because I know that there's, you know, you have to come up with a research question, and I know there are some of the human service courses that also you have to do a research project. Sometimes you even have to do a research project with a group. But you have to develop a question, okay, and you have to gather information from multiple sources, all right? And, you know, going back to this question about opposing thoughts, you're going to find multiple sources that are going to contradict some of the information that is supporting your particular question. You want to evaluate the information, and what that means is you want to make sure that that is reliable, that it's not biased, that the person, you know, for instance, you do not want to use information coming from a blog, okay, that is not reliable, all right, or wiki, all right, you definitely don't want to be using that as a source. And then last point is integrate relevant information to answer a research question, okay. So here's an example of a research question. Okay, and I put questions. I must have decided not to put another one. How do the themes, again, as you can see, this is a question, not a statement. Okay, how do the themes mentioned by the teachers help to explain why middle school children score lower than the junior high students? All right, so that's a question. So don't know what that exactly that means. That's a question that must be, some things must be looked at, or excuse me, are in this particular research that they're looking at specific themes and how they impact the middle school versus junior high. Okay, so your question is how do I go about, okay, developing a research paper? As I mentioned before, make sure you're comfortable about the question. Pick something you are interested in. Anything. Oh, that's the other thing too, is make sure, okay, when you do pick a question, that there's available information, okay, to form the paper. You might come up with a topic that seems to be a question that seems to be a good one, and then you find that you can't find any information on it, and that you might have to switch gears. So before you submit, okay, your question, your research question to your instructor, make sure you've done at least some research, okay, to know that there's information out there, okay, that you can use in your paper. Okay, so the first step, obviously, is to clarify the assignment. Make sure you truly do understand the assignment that is being asked of you, okay? Then you can develop your research question, okay? Then begin doing your research. And what that means is what? That means, you know, we're going to go into this a little bit more, but, you know, you start looking for information to support your question. Develop a thesis statement. Okay, so going back, okay, you got your question, now you're making a statement. Okay, and what is that statement? So, for instance, is the moon blue? Okay, your thesis statement says yes, the moon is blue. Okay, and now you're going to go and support that. You're going to organize your ideas. You're going to create your first draft. Sound familiar? You're going to reread, revise, and rewrite. Then you're going to document your sources and create cited page, okay? And that's where you come up with that formatting, the APA and the MLA, all right, and how you're going to actually format that particular source document. And then finally, you're going to reread and proofread, and then you're going to submit your paper. Yes, there's 10 steps, okay? And you know, unfortunately, that is, you know, the process for developing a research paper, okay? Like I mentioned earlier, it's a process. It doesn't just happen. So how do you go about developing your research paper? Well, like I mentioned earlier, and I know I sound like a broken record, but select an appropriate question, okay, or topic that is researchable and something that you're interested in. Make sure the topic is not too broad or narrow. And see, I told you we were going to probably answer some of your questions. And make sure, you know, the topic interests you. All right. If it doesn't, it's going to be boring, and you're really not going to want to do it, and you're not going to be motivated to complete it. And then make sure too, what do you think would capture the interest of the reader? All right. That's you know, I mean, is it really going to capture the reader about, you know, the moon is blue? Probably not. All right. So pick something different, okay, about the moon. And then select your resources which you are going to include. So for instance, you really do want to have several different sources, okay, to help you form, you know, a viable research question, okay, as well as a paper. So academic journal articles, you know, peer-reviewed versus non-peer-reviewed. Okay, do we understand what that means, by the way? Peer-reviewed versus non-peer-reviewed? So, okay, good. All right. So peer review obviously is somebody that is an expert in that idea, in that particular subject area or whatever, and yes, that's a professional in that field that has a degree. Okay, there you go, Joe. All right, a non-peer review could possibly be, and this is not the case sometimes, but say a journalist, say for instance, or you know, a local newspaper writer might not necessarily be. You know, they might have experience, okay, and knowledge of that particular area, but they're not a professional when it comes to that particular field. They haven't done any studies. And a peer review also is reviewed by their colleague, somebody in that particular area, okay, of interest, that reviews it to make sure that it is credible. All right? Right. A student is definitely a non-peer reviewer, okay? Books. Okay, newspapers, magazines, all right? And as I noted before, avoid citing sources such as Wikipedia, most web articles, blogs, or statements from non-experts, okay? They might be great places to start for ideas possibly, but do not use them to cite, all right? You're going to get nabbed with that, okay? And so I guess the question is how do I find legitimate, reliable academic sources? Well, you can go to our library for one, okay, and that's where you'll find good information available. Yes, exactly, available in the online school library. And you can typically find those in a lot of academic research databases. We have an academic research database that you're going to find academic journal articles. You know, don't be afraid to go to your local library either, by the way. Yes, that's correct. Okay, and the library offers lots of workshops, okay, on how to search the library. They will also go through reliable sources and what is not reliable. You know, like for instance, even web pages. Oh, great, someone's got, you know, like let's go WebMD. Yeah, there's good information out there, but let's look at how reliable are they and who supports that website. Is it advertisers or is it someone else? You know, so you always have to look at where the source is coming from, especially with the internet. Are we able to utilize a research database at any time? Absolutely. There is no time that is limited. It's an online library. It's never shut down. The only time that is limited is you have a live chat. You have a librarian that is available quite extensively, actually. The hours are quite long, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what they are offhand. But the library itself, you can research any time. And Wendy says, I just picked up 3 books for my next paper from the local library, having ordered them through the There you go, perfect. So there's nothing wrong with using your local library and actually going and getting a book and looking at the magazines. You don't have to do everything online. However, again, our library is quite extensive, okay? And so, use our library. And if you don't know how to, or you can't find what you're looking for, just like in your local library, you go to that desk and you talk to the librarian. Well, we have librarians as well, okay? They can help you, okay? Yes, and Anita, who's also with me here tonight from the Office of Academic Support, put the link up there for you guys. Alrighty. No, they're not always available, okay? They have live chats, okay? And they post their hours that they're available, okay? So when you go to the library, you will see those hours when they are available. The workshops that they provide, there's a schedule out there as well, and typically those workshops, they're online, they are recorded, and they are typically 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night. And Melanie says these books are e-books. Some of them are, okay? We are moving in that direction. Some of them are, some of them are not, okay? Just like your textbooks. Okay, so just key points about the research paper. We talked about Google and, just helpful for exploring a topic like I mentioned. They might provide an overview of the topic, which is good. It might give you a direction if you're kind of lost. It will definitely help you narrow your topic and decide what aspect of the topic you want to focus on. So many of you asked, you kind of get lost with your thesis statement and so on and so forth. You can still use this same process, for an essay. It doesn't have to be for a research paper. You can still go to these areas. And also can provide keywords you can use for searching. So you go to the library and you keep searching, you're not coming up with anything. Well, sometimes I kind of get, stuck, and I start going to the internet and going to these places just to come up with a different keyword, okay? It's okay, you can do that. But again, should not be used or cited as a source. They're not reliable. Okay, so okay, that's great. All right, so avoiding plagiarism. Okay, I'm only going to touch base on this. I am not going to get into great detail about plagiarism other than, okay, take this very, very seriously, okay? We know when you plagiarize. I'm just going to say that right offhand. We know you do, okay? And the reason why we know we do is because there's software and there's tools out there to see if in fact you copied verbatim something there on the website, on a textbook, so on and so forth. So please stay away from copying something verbatim. If you are going to do that, you have to cite it, okay? Direct quotes, word for word from a source, has to be in quotation marks. That indicates to the reader that is not your idea. You're just using this to support your statement, okay? You can do that, but make sure that your paper doesn't have all these direct quotes because, again, you can't be doing that either, okay? So, so anything that you're going to cite, okay, if it's a direct quote, use quotations. If you're going to base your paper on, multiple sources, make sure that you give the credit, okay, where it's due. So for instance, we're on 25 here. If you look here, this is not my presentation, meaning I put it together and I used material from another center because they had some great material, and I gave them, okay, the credit for it. Even though I added my own, I still used, information, or excuse me, data and slides from the Metro Center, all right? Right, so I did not plagiarize is my point. I made sure that I gave credit where credit is due, okay? A summary condenses information and puts it in your own words. It's okay. You're reading, that's the whole thing. When you read something, you're summarizing it, okay? But what you do is, in your source page, that is something that you used as a source to put that summary together, okay? And so the reader knows, so we're coming up, okay, Bridget, thank you. Coming up to 7 o'clock, so I'm going to try to, if you guys want to stay, I'll just keep going, okay? This topic is not one we can do usually in an hour. I should have probably said an hour and a half. And then paraphrase is roughly the same length as original, but information is stated in your own words, okay? Somewhat the same as a summary, but I would say, sometimes slightly different. All right? Again, all the above information needs to be cited, and as I mentioned earlier, be sure to record all citation information in your notes or on a on the photocopied article. Okay, so if you're going to the library, photocopy it, you make sure you have information that states where that source came from. Bring a copy of the citation requirements with you to the library. Is it APA? Is it LA? Make sure you know exactly how it's supposed to be formatted. Let's see here. And then, of course, if you are using a web source, I usually copy and paste that particular link in, a Word document with all my sources so I can go back to it and then capture the information for the formatting. Okay, so, all right, document your sources and create a bibliography page, okay? Sometimes some of your papers are going to need that, sometimes they don't. It all depends on what is being asked of you. Proper citation formats. We talked about this. Go to Diane Hacker's A Writing Resource. Oops, did we?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay. This can be found, obviously, on our website, and I give you a link here, but it also can be found at bedfordmartin.com. I already mentioned the Diane Hacker, which can be found on our website, as well as there is a website for Diana. You can also purchase that reference book as well. Okay, Mary, thank you. I'm getting there. Let's go through this. The bibliography versus an annotated bibliography. Bibliography is a list of sources and references, okay? Annotated bibliography is a summary and or evaluation, okay, of those sources. I'm just going to leave it at that because we can get into that a little bit more for the next page. So you annotated bibliography. This is just a sample, okay, everybody? Thank you, Kelly. There's your source. It's in the MLA, okay, format, and then you're just giving a quick, summary and opinion about that particular source. That's what that means. So can everybody just raise their hand, okay, or give some indicator if you want me to continue?
Some of them were saying continue.
All right, definitely continue? Okay. All right, great. Okay.
Slow down, you're fine.
All right, got it. Thank you. Okay, so here are some strategies. And again, something, this is not rocket science. Don't make writing very difficult, okay? Take a deep breath. Yes, it can be hard, okay? But again, remember, it is a process. It takes a little time. Again, if you're trying to do it the night before or 2 days before, you are going to stress over it, and it is going to be very difficult. Okay, so the first thing is analyze the assignment. Again, I can't say this enough. Make sure you really truly understand the assignment, all right? If the assignment was given orally, write it out and read it until you thoroughly are familiar with that particular assignment. If you're not sure, ask the instructor. There's nothing wrong with asking the instructor. I can tell you right now, I took a master's course and I had 2 assignments. And the first assignment, I had no clue what the instructor was asking me. I mean, I read it and read it and read it and read it. I even asked somebody to read it and say, can you tell me? I'm not clear about what is being asked of me. Before I asked the instructor, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something. In fact, the assignment was just written, what was being asked was not written very well. I mean, it happens. And so I asked the instructor, and the instructor clarified. All right? So just make sure that you do know what you're supposed to do going forward. Otherwise, it's going to make it very, very difficult. You're welcome, Leslie. Thank you. You're welcome, Brian. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so step 2, consider the writing situation, all right? Meaning, why has my professor given me the assignment? Is it intended primarily to test my knowledge of the reading, or is it for me to go beyond the reading? Am I expected to break new ground? Really, what is the purpose? What is this, why is the subject important, so on and so forth? Who's the audience? Obviously, the audience, well, it depends. Sometimes the audience is other students in the course. Depending on the course itself, you might be asked to write a paper and actually submit it to the students in the discussion board. And then students are to comment, okay, on your particular paper. All right, so you got to look at, okay, who is your audience? If it's the instructor only, okay, well, that's a different story, all right? Or is it? I mean, I'm just posing a question. Okay, so that's that. Going back to analyze the assignment, make sure you too also understand what type of paper, okay, or type of writing they are looking for you to submit. And then step 3, ask questions. So if the assignment's purpose, subject, or audience is not clear, as I mentioned, ask questions. So I've already really addressed that. What form do you want the instructor wants you to use? That's important to know. What type of thinking, okay, and what type of paper is expected. So make sure that that is very, very clear. Step 4, ask to see a sample. Now sometimes that's not possible. You might have to actually go search that. But sometimes the instructor will give you a sample. Again, it depends on the course. And then step 5, make the assignment your own, okay? Meaning, we already talked about this. Make sure that you're picking a particular topic that you're interested in, then you own it. Then it's more interesting. I just want to make sure I cover some of these points here. Okay, the last point here, and I want to make sure I make this point. Again, you're going to do something that you're familiar with, all right? But if it doesn't exactly meet the criteria that the instructor has asked you to meet, you might want to just say, listen, I'm really interested in this particular topic. It doesn't exactly meet the requirements. Is there any way, I can still do this and still meet the requirements? The instructor might come up with some ideas, okay? So when in doubt, just ask the instructor instead of going forward, if that makes any sense. So again, here's some additional strategies, and again, a lot of this is just common sense. Allow time to review your paper. I know that sometimes this can be very difficult, and that we put off the most difficult things that have to be done, or maybe the most difficult course. Honestly, you should always go and you always should start with your most difficult course, because then at least if you chip away at it and you complete a couple things, you feel a little less stress. All right, but again, allow time to review your paper again at least 3 times, quite honestly. All right, and please try not to start writing a paper, 2 days, 3 days prior, and even allow time to submit it to Smart Thinking. Smart Thinking does return it within 24 hours, but again, don't do it 2 days before it's due. Read slowly, out loud, and or to someone. Look for errors. Okay, make sure that you point out unclear sentences so you can clean them up. Again, ask someone else to read your paper. Okay, why not? Most likely you have somebody there at, either wherever you work or possibly in your home, or a teenager, your mother, grandmother, whoever. They're going to be interested in reading your paper. Include them. They want to, I'm sure, participate. Make the necessary corrections so that your paper is clear and presented in the best possible way. Try not to cheat here, okay? Make sure that you have a period where it's supposed to be. Make sure you have a capital where it's supposed to be. Make sure that, there's no misspellings. I mean, those are easy things that you really, that really impact the grade of your paper. Denise, what has helped me is to backwards plan for the paper, allow myself 3 to 4 weeks if possible. Outlines help me stay. Yes, and actually that's a great idea, Denise. Okay, is to back up. And there's some tools out there on the website that can, you can type in the due date of your paper and it backs it up for you and tells you should be starting this, 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 and this, and you should start it at this point. You should be doing this. So you could use tools like that. Oh, Yvette, oh my gosh, 2 a.m. All right. Well, you go get some sleep, and I will make sure I send you the recording, okay? And thank you very much for coming. We're going to type in what Smart Thinking is, okay? Let me see here. Research papers should not include "I think you will agree." Again, the research paper, you're supporting it with evidence. It's not what you think, and it's not, you will agree. You're trying to, in some cases, present evidence to support your question in your thesis, okay? And in some cases, you're also going to provide some opposing, like we mentioned earlier, opposing angles or statements, okay? So try to stay away from that. There's some papers, not research papers, where you do, you know, like journals, for instance, you can you know, you can use I. Research paper, if citing a group of researchers, make sure to use the group concluded or it was determined. Do not use they found, because the first question is, who is they? All right, remember that. Who is they? And so as you're reading your papers, if you have a lot of theys in there, the first question, who is they, or she, or he, well, who is he and who is she? All right? So if you have a lot of that in your paper, you might want to go back through and go, okay, well, I mean Bob, and I mean Kelly, all right? That's who, the he and she, and they, make sure it's the group, okay? Always balance your writing, okay, meaning, and again, it supports, see, I was going to answer those questions. I knew it. We would in some of these slides. If you can present opposing views in your paper, this makes the paper stronger and balanced, okay? It's not biased, okay? So if you're only presenting one side of the story, then it is definitely biased. And by the way, if you go to, you know, some of your sources and they seem pretty biased, most likely they are biased if they're not given any opposing, okay, viewpoints, okay? Okay. Oh, we're getting to the end. Okay, so here's just some references. Don't write them down. You're going to get them in the slides anyways. But something definitely to view, the craft of research, the moves that matter in academic writing. You know, these are always probably some good things to review to make your writing stronger. And then, of course, there's lots of courses that you can take if, in fact, you feel that you need to strengthen some of your academic writing. And there's workshops that are always offered, you know, on writing, on time management that might help with the writing. And of course, we do have a writing center where you can go and there's lots of resources for writing. And if in fact you find yourself where you need really additional help, we do have a writing coach that I will assign if I feel it's necessary. Okay? And of course, the last slide is a cheat sheet which you'll get. These are sources for support and contact information for my office, as well as, you know, other sites. Okay. Okay, so Amia, what is opposing views, my viewpoint, and other researchers' feedback, or what? Opposing views, Amia, if it's a research paper, okay, is basically a researcher is saying X and another researcher saying Y. That's opposing views. Okay, so if depending on the paper, if it's your viewpoint, okay, is there somebody else that disagrees with your viewpoint? So for instance, if you go to, again, if I take ethics, for instance, because typically everybody has, you know, opposing views, your opposing view might be X and you're supporting it with a particular theory, but your counterpart in your course is saying, well, I disagree with you. Okay, that's opposing views. Okay, Bonnie, thank you very much for coming. I will send you the recorded link. Opposing views are any arguments that can be presented against your thesis statement. That is correct. I know this was very quick, and as I went through the presentation, I'm thinking this needs to be cut in half and maybe hone in on specific details. I know I'm going to be doing another presentation on academic writing. It's a little bit different than this. But any feedback that you can provide to make the presentation better work for you, you know, I mean, the whole point is to make sure that this particular presentation is working for you and that you got something out of it. I presented lots and lots of information. Okay, MLA. Melanie, you need to go to the library, okay, or online library. They do address MLA formatting. There's a workshop, but there's also some great resources on the library page, as well as under My ESC under the Learning Support tab, okay? My point is that when you get the recorded link, you're also going to get a link to a survey. It takes about 5 minutes. Anything that you can provide as far as what you thought about the presentation today, how I can make it better, what were you looking for, did it meet your expectations, please be honest so I can make this presentation better. Okay, Kelly, thank you very much. You have a nice evening. Oh, thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. So any other questions? Any comments? Anything that you think I should review a little bit more? Again, a lot of this information is on our website under the Learning Support tab. If you go to My ESC and you go to the green tab, Learning Support tab, you will find a lot of links to a lot of this information. Oh, I agree, Carol. I use Diane Hacker all the time. It's a great resource, great resource, and yes, it's my Bible as well. Oh, you're welcome, Karen. Thank you. You're welcome, Melanie. You're welcome, everyone. I'm just waiting. I'm seeing people are typing, so I'll stay here until we're done. You're welcome. Okay, I agree, Joe, and it's interesting. I was trying to grab some writing samples, and then I was getting up to, like, you know, I didn't want the presentation to be 50 pages, but you have a point that maybe I have a presentation that is specific to research writing, say, for instance, and then we go through some samples of what a research paper looks like. Yeah, that's fine. William, personally, you could use a citation if you wanted to. I mean, if you were, but I think it should be in your own words, your introduction. Okay, if you want to put in the introduction in your own words, and then maybe cite something, okay, that gives your introduction a little bit more, you know, impact. I guess you could do that. But personally, I would like to see it in your own words. You too, Amia. Thank you. You're welcome, Pat. Sometimes we'll but broken into and down. Yeah, it is. It can be very overwhelming when you're writing, you know, some of these papers. And again, if you just follow some of those steps, you know, step back and, like I said, go through a process. Allow yourself to go, you know, in an unstructured path. But then know that you have to come back to somewhat of a structured, you know, environment when you write. I think it makes it a lot easier. Of course, you can get really unstructured and have too much information, and then that's another issue. You have a good evening too, Wendy. You're welcome. William and Ed and Wendy, yes. Thank you, Diane. I appreciate it. You have a good night as well. Okay, Lauren, you'll get, yeah, exactly. In a few days, you'll get the slides. Hopefully, I'm hoping tomorrow, if not the latest Thursday, okay? Yes, okay. Lisa Marie, that's fine, but you'll get the presentation as well, and if there's anything that you need me to clarify on any of those slides, just send me an email or give me a call, okay? You're welcome. Yes, Maggie, everybody will get the slides. Everybody's going to get the PowerPoint presentation, the recorded link from tonight, and a survey, a link. I'm going to stop the recording. You guys have a good evening. I'll stay here for a couple more minutes, okay?